What's good, fam? Hope you guys are all doing good this Wednesday afternoon. And if you're not good, remember that the VYG fam is always out here to take good care of you. There ain't no stopping us. You know very well, there ain't no stopping us. Not at all. So, at any given moment, feel free to reach out to us, to drop us a DM, tell us what's going on, tell us where you're from, and we'll be more than willing, more than glad to assist and help each and every one of you. What I want to speak today about is the dangers of assumptions. Now, we live in a time and age of a lot of information which we are fed, information about a crisis, information about a crime, information about a country. How often do we hear about a country when we're not there? We hear about the war in Russia, or rather in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine. We hear about the war in Israel, between Israel and Palestine. We hear about these things, these crises, these atrocious events which occur around the world. We've never been there. But have you noticed how much we discuss, how much we talk about it, as if we were there? At times we speak like a primary source. Source, I remember it very well in history, which was literally someone who lived that event, someone who's talking about an event which they were actually there. What happened was the car drove down the street and this and this and that happened. But how often do we speak as if we were a primary source, whereby we just heard it from another person or another person or another person, or we read it on the news, who perhaps even the person who wrote about that news heard about it from someone else, got the information from someone else. And that results in assumptions. That results in us making decisions thinking that we actually know what happened or what is happening. How often do we assume we know someone because of how that person looks, or because of something we heard about that person? So perhaps someone you're close to, someone you know, will say to you, be careful with that person because he or she is like this or like that, or he or she did this to me, or maybe not even to me. So and so told me that he did that. So the sources are less and less and less and less reliable the more it passes on from one person to another. Because the understanding that one person will have of the information the previous passed on to him or to her, well, that information may be sent quite differently. My point here is relationships, opportunities, and so many things are lost and destroyed when we make assumptions, when we don't follow what a common phrase which says that every story has two sides, and we don't follow the understanding of both sides. How often do we try to push our narrative, where we believe, where we want to believe in, where we choose to, make up of that story? And the problem is not only when we do that, but the problem is when we do that and we pass on the story as if indeed that assumption which we have made is the actual story. We share it as if, like I said, we were actually there, as if we were a primary source to the information, a primary source of information to that event or to that occurrence, which is a very dangerous thing. Because when we assume things, we tend to behave like we know something which in actual fact we don't know. We tend to treat certain things in a way as if we know, when in actual fact we just heard it from someone else. So we hear it from one person. And when we hear the other side, we hear it from the other side, it's kind of like clashing. It causes a conflict. How much fake news is spread out there? How much fake news do you hear about an institution, about a person, about an individual, about a company, about a business? And we literally take that as an information which is reliable because somebody told us, because so-and-so told us, and based on what so-and-so told us, that becomes the reality in our minds. And because it's a reality in our minds, guess what we do? We pass it on as if it is a reality about life. I want to tell you, be cautious with that. Be very careful with the moments where you make assumptions. You believe based on just what you believe. You don't believe based on facts. It's kind of like maths. 1 + 1 is 2. There's nothing you can do to change that. If I've got 1 plus another 1, there's 2. There's nothing you can do to change that. Regardless of what you feel, regardless of what assumption you can make, facts are facts. The problem is, oftentimes people are not willing to seek out the facts. People aren't willing to understand that sometimes the fact is not exactly what you want to hear, not exactly what we want to hear. At times the fact is far from what we wish it were. At times we hear something and we think that's how it is. We think it could only be like that. And based on assumptions, wrong choices and decisions are made. Based on the assumption that that person is a bad person, you don't befriend that person, you don't give a chance to that person to prove that is who he is or who he isn't. And you might say, but PJ, I heard it from many people. Well, you may have heard it from many people, but fake news spreads like that, where one person spreads something to another person, and before you know it, the reality of that story is far from told. How often does that happen? Are you aware of it? Do you see the symptoms? So they say that person is a liar. Do you see the symptoms of a liar there? And even if that person once upon a time was a liar, a deceiver, who are we to judge and think that person is not worthy of a second chance? Who? I'm not saying risk it. What I'm saying is you can still observe. You could still give that person a chance, especially because we all have our flaws. We all have our mistakes. We all have our defeats. We all have traits which we are ashamed of. So who are we to judge another human being? So now think with me. Keep the scenario in your mind. Imagine a man commits a crime. He goes into a shop and steals a bottle of Coke. He goes there, steals a 2-liter bottle of cold drink and storms out of that building. He gets caught by the cops. Gets sentenced to let's say 6 months in jail for stealing, for shoplifting. He's taken there, and after he fulfills his time, he does his time, he is freed. And then you take that same man, and one day there is a crime which is committed. There is a shootout, there's a bank robbery. Then you take that person and you say he was there on this time of that day. He was there, he was the one who robbed the bank. And imagine he stands in front of the judge, and the judge says, give me evidence that this happened. And the judge says, and the person rather says, the accuser says, no, because remember he stole bread 6 months ago? So if he stole bread, I'm sure he robbed this bank as well, for example. Do you think that would be fair on the guy who stole the bread? Oh, but he committed a crime. Yes, he committed crime. He did his time. Is it right for us to just make assumptions about that person and think that person doesn't have the right to prove his innocence, to prove his change, hopefully his change? I'm not saying that every single person who goes to jail and comes out is okay and is actually rehabilitated, because they call prison a rehab, a rehabilitation facility, correctional service, let me say it. It doesn't mean that person was actually corrected, not in every case, but still, would it be fair that he pays for a crime which he never committed just because he committed one before? Would it be fair that we just assume that it was that person because, once upon a time that person did that? Would it be fair that his side of the story, or his version of that story, isn't told? He doesn't have a chance to say, look, I walked past the bank, but I didn't even go in. Or I went in to open an account at that bank. I don't know what it could be. But the fact is, we have absolutely no right to make assumptions. Opportunities are lost. Relationships are broken, specifically because we assume things. Because we, like I said, we reiterate or we echo. We repeat that song or that occurrence as if we were there when in actual fact, we were never there. We speak about it as if we know something, when in actual fact, we never did our research. We just heard it from someone and we think we know exactly what's going on. I want to say to you, be careful with that. Be careful with assumptions. As a matter of fact, I want to say to you that you have every right to question. You should be a person who questions, who thinks, and who reasons before making any assumption. When I hear something on the news, I always give that person a benefit of a doubt. Of course, there are sources at times, CCTV footage, which give away that that human being was actually there. That person actually probably did commit that crime. But I will always give it a 10%, 15 to 20% margin for error. Margin to actually question, could that person really have done that? I repeat, I'm not saying we should make innocent those who are guilty. What I'm saying is we should not make them nor anyone guilty based on an assumption. We should not frame people based on what we think. Because a person has a serious face, doesn't smile much, now you assume that person is what you think. Oh, he's like that. Or that person's talkative, because that person's talkative, he's a gossiper, or lo muntu ya papa. Or because that person jokes a lot, that person is an attention seeker. Maybe that person's just happy. Of course, you can only know a person when you know a person. When you actually get to know that person, when you put your assumptions aside and you give that person the right, the opportunity to prove himself or herself, to prove who he or she truly is. When we don't do that, do you know what we do? We become like that judge. Remember I said, imagine a judge in a court of law who says, I'm not going to hear both sides of the story. I'm going to hear what I want to hear. I'm going to hear what I feel like hearing. If this is true, awesome. If it's not true, that ain't my problem. Hey, he committed... Look, this guy looks like he committed a crime. He's got that look. He's got that look to him. The way he walked into my court kind of tells me he's a criminal. You know what? Jury, don't worry about it. Prosecute it. You don't have to bring the evidences or anything, any of the charges you're trying to lay up against him. Don't worry about it. I got you. He looks like a criminal. Bang, he hits the gavel and says he's guilty or she's guilty. That's exactly what we do when we make assumptions. When you walk into a place and you don't give that place an opportunity to prove itself, or to that person to prove himself or herself. That's it. Be careful with assumptions. You can do better than that. We can do better than that. Listen to both sides of a story. Just because you don't like someone, or let me not say you dislike, but let me say, just because you're not fond of someone doesn't mean that person doesn't have a chance to prove the truth. Just because that person committed 500 other crimes, or let me say 999 crimes, doesn't mean the 1,000th crime is his. Of course, chances are he did, because 999. But my point is, who knows that at the 999th crime, he says, I'm changing. I don't know. The fact is, we should hear both sides of a story. You hear somebody say something to you, listen to it, but also listen the other side. I've been very often where I had to deal with a situation, and I listened to the story from one person. And when I heard it from that one person, I went guns blazing at the other one, only to find out that the other one had a reasonable excuse. The other one had a motive as to why that was done. And that motive backed up, not that what he did was bad, but it gave the wrong impression on the other side. And I looked terrible because I assumed that person was wrong. How many times did I stereotype, did I generalize a person and think this person is like this because I thought that person was like that, not knowing that in actual fact the person was the opposite of what I believed in. So, if not mistaken, last week, if it wasn't last week, it was the week before, we spoke about being the epicenter, the center of attention. Those who are the center of attention, they don't listen to both sides of the story. They listen to the side of the story which they want to hear. They listen to the side of the story which suits their narrative, which suits their argument, which suits what they feel. So I'm angry and I want to act. And since you're that person who usually gets on my case, and now I've got a case against you, now I'm going to use that, add it to my anger, and boom, I'm going to lash out on you. The epicenter effect, where it's all about me. If you have that, and if you didn't, check out the previous weeks of the Something Extra for you to see where we spoke about that. But be careful. Be careful with assumptions. Not always are things the way you think they are. I hope this is a life lesson you will carry with you, and that it was profitable, will be profitable for you, for your future, for your lives, whether it's in your career choice, your career path, whether it's in your studies, whether it's in your family, whether it is in your love life, whether it's in relationships, friendships, family, you name it. Take this lesson and apply it. Always be ready to listen to both sides of the story. Don't make assumptions. Don't assume, because when you assume, you claim to know something when you don't know it yet. You might be right with your assumption, but PJ, my assumption, I was correct. You were correct this time. It won't be always the case. So be careful with that. Got it? That's it from my side, fam. I will rendezvous with you guys again this Saturday at 7 p.m. for the Vibe O'Clock. Last week I couldn't be with you as I was with the Alex fam for that amazing sports tournament. Although I just pitched in, but I know that you guys were in good hands with Uncle Vinny. But this Saturday, I plan to be with you guys. It is as well the Good Friday weekend. But this Saturday, I plan on being with you guys at 7 p.m. here on our platforms. And do make sure you get others to follow, to like, share these links with them. Give them a chance to also be part of this amazing fam, which is the VYG. And reminding you that on the 3rd of May, we will be having our VYG Career Expo. I hope to see all of you at the grounds. We will have different industries, facilities, sharing all the different opportunities which are there for you, as not just for young people, but for all ages. You guys are all welcome. I hope to see you all there. It won't be taking place only here in Joburg, but throughout South Africa. All right? I'll see you guys. Take care of yourselves. And you know exactly where we at. There ain't no stopping us. Take care of yourselves. See you all soon. We out of here.